Well, hello, everybody. It's the Three Witches back again. I'm going to start with that because we were just chatting about what should we talk about? And it felt a little bit like Macbeth. And, we three gathered here again. What are we going to talk about? And no, it's not going to be Eyes of Newt or anything like that. I don't think.
Bubble, 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 toil and trouble.
Your turn, Lottie.
Oh, yeah, the magic in the business
Yeah.
is a great topic because I think we all do magic. I think everybody uses magic, and it depends how you define the word magic. And we talked a little bit about that. And like you said, it doesn't have to be Harry Potter, but when we're using magic in business, magic can be many different things. Things that come to us can seem magical. All of a sudden, we get intuition that we should go in this direction. It could be I'm picking up this product because intuitively I feel this is really going to be a game changer for my business, or I'm going to start working in a different way. And all these things are magical experiences because we can't really explain why or how we go about doing certain things, and why we follow the intuition sometimes and not other times.
Yeah.
And I would say we're all filled with magic. It's just a matter of tuning into that as beings. And it always comes down to don't let that mind interfere so much with logical reasoning, but follow your passion and your heart. And that's what really brings the magic, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. What about, how do you feel, Kim?
I feel like magic equals a lot of things. So, magic equals manifestation, magic equals intuition, magic equals sparks. And, it's all like an equation, which I'm really bad at the maths, as you would say in the UK. Uh, not bad at it, but it's not something that intrigues me or I enjoy or I was never very good at. But it's like that A plus B equals C. And I feel like if you have all of those things, you're going to just combust into magic if you're listening to your intuition. And you had mentioned something about yoga maybe being magic. Well, it is. It's moving your body, it's listening to your body, it's following your intuition. As Lottie says, so much of that is magic. And I believe it's very challenging for some of us and us as well, even though we know these things. Sometimes it's hard to trust that intuition and believe that that is the magic we are seeking. And I think it is a practice. As you said, we have to practice. And sometimes you may get it wrong because you really aren't listening to your heart, you're listening to your mind sometimes. And instead of that you should or shouldn't eat this certain thing, it's good for you. That's a very simplistic way of saying it. But your ego says, oh, it's okay. Just going to do that. Go ahead. Go ahead. When in reality, should you have chosen another food or something, you might feel better. You might, and that's just a very simple way of testing your body in a sense. And I think we get so stuck in ruts in terms of business. Well, I must do it this way because that's the way someone else has done it, instead of listening to the magic inside to create whatever it is we know that we should create or that is going to have the most impact on someone. So it all comes back to listening inside.
It does indeed. I so agree with you both. Not surprising that really, but there you go. But I do. And for me, we're all trained and taught, and in school, it's like you've got to think everything through. You've got to, have you worked this out? Have you thought about that? All of those sort of phrases that come up. And so our minds really get pushed. And if you sort of talk about your intuition, maybe at school or in a business meeting, somebody will sort of say, really? I mean, surely that's just imagination. Or if they're feeling really rude, it's really woo-woo or something like that. And it isn't. And the other end of it, because we've talked about intuition, But the other side of intuition that has always been for me is your instincts. And your instincts get so ridiculed. Oh, they're just animal things. We don't have them. We're posh humans or something. And gradually nowadays, that differential, which perhaps everyone's assumed for a long time, that animals are somehow lesser than us and plants are somehow lesser than us, is getting less. And so perhaps we're getting towards our gut feelings. And, when we follow those, that really works too. And you can't explain it, can you? It's like your intuition. I just know, I know in my guts that we shouldn't be here, or I know in my guts we really should be here, or whatever. And so it's why, why, Ellen? And you sort of go, I don't know. I just know we've got to go.
I think it would be beneficial for our listeners, and I'm sure you all have ways, and I can think of some to help them. They might be saying, well, that's all well and good. You all know you can trust your intuition. We don't always know. I'm just going to put that out there. At least I don't always know. But perhaps we should give people a trick or a tip. Or it's easier sometimes for me, I know, to give advice or to give suggestions sometimes than to take my own. But if we give people, because if I were listening, I'd want to go, okay, that's all great, but how? How do I do that? What do I do? How do I tap in? And I think that each of you, and I'll come up with something, might have something to offer them, which would assist our lovely listeners, watchers, viewers, sparklers.
I would say it's training. Part of it is just training. So when I went to med school, when I was 54, and I'm sitting, the first things that the teachers told us is we're going to take so many tests. I mean, we had, several tests a week. It was just insane, the amount of testing, and you have to pass them all the time. But they said, always go with your first instinct when you're looking at those multiple choice questions, and you have to, there isn't much time to think. You read the question, you look at the answer, that one, next question, because you have to move so quickly. But that was the best advice that I think I received, because that first intuition, and we have to take all those board exams, that are hours long, and there isn't really any time to go back. You have to make a decision and move on, or you're not going to finish. So when you see, the question, and then instinctively you might say, not that one, not that one. It's either this one or that one. But that instinct that comes to you, the first instinct, it's that one. It's B. You check it off. And I would say 9 out of 10 times that is the correct answer. But the interesting part is, so then I graduated from med school and I studied mediumship in England at Arthur Findlay College. And what did I learn there? That first message, the first image, the first thing I hear, the first thing I feel is always the correct message. As soon as I let the brain come in, if I'm working as a medium or if I'm taking a test, as soon as my brain starts saying, oh, I don't know, does that really make sense? I mean, the spirit is showing you dolphins or pineapples, and we were talking about something else. And all of a sudden you feel, this sounds really crazy, right? And you're afraid of even saying it in the beginning. But then you learn those things that came first that your mind thought was absolutely crazy are always the correct answer, is always the correct thing. But it's the same thing with test taking, and it's the same thing with my life. So that gut instinct, that first thought, no, it's this. Don't let my mind come in and stir this up now. Like, go away, mind. I know this is the right thing. But it's so difficult in the beginning to trust it. And I would say that is just training ourselves to say, no, that was my first thing that came to me. I'm going to stick with that. And it's the same when I work as a medical medium. It's that first message. I'll have somebody on the screen and they're talking about, their headaches or their digestive issues or whatever. And I say, well, as soon as you came on the screen, Spirit World told me this, and I'm going to stick with that. So forget your headaches and your digestive issues. because spirit world's talking about this thing. Do you have these symptoms? And they're, yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. I was diagnosed with that, 20 years ago. And I said, that is still your problem, because that's what the spirit world told me. But it's always the first thing. It's always the first message. So I would say it's just training ourselves to really to listen to our own intuitive messages, and just let that brain, leave the brain behind, leave it on. I always tell people, leave it on top of your fridge. Just take the brain out and put it somewhere else, and just tune into your own feelings and your own heart.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you, Lottie, and I've got a lovely story to come in with that, and it is about this first instinct thing. And I wasn't taught it in med school or anything like that, but I was taught it later when I was in the psychotherapy and doing psychotherapy training. It's like, go with the first thing that you feel, the first thing that your guts tell you. And like you were saying, Lottie, it may not be what the person has come presenting. So it's like, steer that way. But the story, and this was in mediumship training as well. And we were in quite a large class, quite a large group. And so in the afternoon, we were paired off and we had to work with each other and see what came up for each other. So I was working with this lovely woman, and she did some really good stuff for me. And then it was my go. And I've always been able to see, but I was only getting one image with this woman. And it was a bit daft. So I was like going, really? Really? Inside, because the image was this enormous, enormous potato. I was seeing a potato this big, a big sort of, hairy brown job with a few stalks coming out of it. And I was sitting there going, how do you say to this woman, I'm just seeing a potato? And A, I'm going to feel off my trolley, and B, she's going to think I'm insulting her or something, because we haven't met before the class or anything like that. And so I'm there like going, and what I call, what you call spirit, I often call otherworld. And my guides there were sort of going, go on, push, go on. You got to say this, go on, like this. And I was thinking, so eventually I plucked up courage and I said, I'm terribly sorry, this might sound really ridiculous, but all I'm getting is this image of a potato. The woman burst into tears. So I was there doing all the, like, pass the tissues, encourage her to keep crying and don't tell her to stop or anything like that. And, putting my arm around her when she showed that she wanted a hug. And so after about 5 minutes, and it was really tough crying, it was like, can you talk about it? Can you tell me about this at all? Are you feeling a little better? How you feel when you're like that. So she told me, and it was a story that she had never told anybody in her whole life before. She used to live over on the east side of Britain, which is a very flat, lots of big farming stuff. And one of the things they grow there is masses and masses of potatoes, both for eating and seed potatoes for growing. And she'd lived in a cottage down a lane. And in those days, we all used to walk to school, and she'd walk up the path, and sometimes she'd take a shortcut across the field and get to the village a bit quicker. And this evening, it was a bit cold and dark and that, but, getting dark, but not very. And so she's like, no, I'm going to get across the field instead. So she got a little way into the field, and these young lads came along, and they wanted to rape her. And she said they didn't actually rape her, but they knocked her on the ground and knocked her about a bit and that sort of thing. And she got away and went home. And this is going back to the 1960s. So for this woman, so, you didn't tell your mum anything like that. And you tidied your clothes up. And you said, oh, I'm sorry, I fell over in the field, and all this sort of thing. And she had lived with that. She was a girl, what, 12, 13 at the time when this happened. She had lived with that all her life. And me saying, I'm sorry, all I saw was a potato, brought it out. And, you know, who would expect that? And yet it was exactly the right thing. And that was.
And you helped her trauma from that.
Yes, just releasing it the once. I mean, I didn't have a chance to work with her again, but I did catch up later and find that she had gone to somebody and was getting help through it, and a lot of stuff was being released, and she was getting over all the shame and the anger and everything that you feel when anything like that happens to her. So it's like, goodness sake, try and trust your instincts. I mean, that's a bit, so it's quite a dramatic story, but it's never left me, because it just, like you, Lottie, it convinced me. And I think we have to, as you said, train ourselves to learn to do that. And part of that, the problem with that, is taking the risk of being wrong. And that's huge for all of us, including me still. And the risk of being wrong is so difficult, but you sort of have to jump off that cliff and sort of say, I'm going to do this and see what happens.
Right. And I think that,
beautiful story.
Yeah, it really is.
Of the magic at play.
Exactly. And you were willing. And I think that for people who are not in the mediumship world, or who are like, well, that's not me, you know, blah, blah, they could take a journal and do a little test and write down just write down your intuition. I don't exactly know, this is just coming to me how or why or what, but if you get a hit about something, write it down and then move on. See if that is actually what happens. And what came to me as we were speaking about this is Mel Robbins. She's an inspirational speaker, and she's written a book called The 5-Second Rule. And I heard her speak at a conference once. And when you get an idea, if you don't act on it within 5 seconds, it's gone. Someone else is going to grab, she doesn't say this part, but I say this part. Someone else is going to grab onto that idea, which is out in the universe, and take hold of it and use it and run with it. Because how many times do we say, at least in my world of podcasting, oh, I would really like to interview that person. They're not going to want me to interview them. They're, you know, instead of just sending a quick email or a DM or something, would you like to? And sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. That's a very simple example. But if you get an intuitive hit, act on it in 5 seconds or write it down so you don't forget, or else it's gone.
Yeah. I'd run with that one, and I don't keep a diary anymore, but for probably at least two-thirds of my life I did. And I've got them still, and I go back over them. And at the time, it might be sort of 6 weeks later after you wrote something, and you go, oh, I knew that, you know, back in May, and now it's just coming to pass. And it's like training, as you said, Lottie, it's training and having your own system of journaling's great. Actually jumping. What other systems can we think of that people might really be able to use?
Well, when you're talking, a story comes to mind, and how it started for me and how I learned to listen, because more things around us has meaning. And I feel like the spirit world is always tapping us on our shoulder saying, oh no, look over here. And back in 2017, and I had just gone to Arthur Findlay College for the first time. I was, you know, my first year out of med school. I had only been licensed about 6 months. And I went to Arthur Findlay the first time. And then I'm at Arthur Findlay College the first time, and I'm in the little bookstore, and I wanted a book for the flight home. And I wanted it to be on mediumship. So I looked through the entire bookstore. Not one book speaks to me. So I kept going back 3 days. Now it's an hour before I'm leaving. I'm already packed up. My suitcase is in the lobby, back in the bookstore. Why can't I find a book? The only books that spoke to me, one was, and I kept laughing, it looks like a children's book. It has animals on the cover. And the other book was about shamanism. And I said, I really wanted a book on mediumship, but it's too late. I have to leave. So I'm just going to get these books because they're the only ones for 3 days that have popped out to me. So I get the books. I don't know anything about shamanism, spirit animals, you name it. I'm completely new in the field. Though then, of course, I realized that it's always been there, but I just didn't know that it was always there. So then I get home and I'm looking, reading about the spirit animals, and wow, all you see an animal and it's sort of bringing you a message. And I started noticing that every day I came home from work, because I lived up in the 2 hours north of Phoenix, up in the mountains at 5,000-6,000 feet. So lots of wild animals. And I would come home, same deer on my driveway every day. So then I said, well, let me look it up in the book. So that I got the book out that I had gotten about the spirit animals. And sure enough, there was the message about the deer that I so needed to hear at that point in my life. And then I started noticing, wait, there's a skunk. Oh, there's a raven. Oh, there's a squirrel. There's a javelina. And all these animals, I started noticing them instead of just saying, oh, look, what a pretty bird. Or, oh, look, what a pretty deer. Let me, people nowadays get the camera, post it on Facebook. I saw this. And that's all just to drive our own egos, right? But instead, I started noticing that nature was really bringing me messages and the animals were right there. Why is this bird outside my kitchen window every morning? I don't even have a bird feeder. Why does he always land so I can see him? So I started looking up all the animals, and of course, they were all bringing me messages that I so needed to hear at that time. And then I went to walk my dog, and I found a feather. And I had already been living up there for a year. I had not found a feather since I was a child. That was a swan feather, like for years. I mean, it's been like 50 years. And so I find this feather, and it's a black feather. And I was like, wow, look at this huge, beautiful feather. So I take it home, and now I'm looking up the meaning, what kind of feather is this? Then I realized it was a raven bird. Then I looked up the meaning of finding a raven feather. Oh, you're in this transformation right now. And I had just gone to Arthur Findlay College. My doors were opening up to the spirit world. And then I went a couple of days later in a different area with my puppy. And I said, okay, spirit world, if that was really a message to me, then let me find another feather. Now, I'm reminding you, this is the first feather I've found in 50 years. So do I find another feather? As soon as I look down towards the bushes, another black feather. So I said, okay, twice. 2 times could still be a coincidence because I'm so scientific. I go a couple of days later, I go to a different area and I say, all right, spirit world, if that was really a message for me, then let me find another feather. I look down, I find another feather. Now I have 3 feathers. One more time. Okay, that was 3 times. One more time. A couple of days later, I do it again. I have 4 feathers. I still have the feathers. And that is just, it's just astounding. First of all, I found 4 feathers. I don't know why all of a sudden, those days at that time, I needed to hear those messages. Yes, you're going through a transformation. Yes, it's true that you can communicate with the spirit world. You are moving in that spiritual direction, and all the training you had for the past 20 years and listening to the spirit world for my own messages. But it's different now because now I'm opening up my doors to help other people with the messages so I can be of service and help humanity as a whole, to help other people heal. It's not just about my journey anymore. It's about other people's journey. But when I told my daughter the story, she was laughing so hard. Mom, how many times do they have to prove it to you? You already know that you can communicate. You already know about the spirit world. But it's that scientific part of me and my mind coming in saying, okay, prove it to me, prove it to me. But the truth is, I could just have taken that first feather, said, looked it up and said, oh, what a wonderful message. Thank you, spirit world. I don't need another 3 confirmations on that. So that's my message to the listeners today. Just go with that first message, look up the meaning, trust it, and move on. You don't need all the confirmations. So it's just a matter of tuning into ourselves and just trusting it within ourselves. That was the message for me. I get it. It resonates with me. And now I'm going to take that and move on.
Yeah.
If that's not magic, I don't know what is. And you hear that all the time, that spirit is willing to answer when you ask a question. And for those who don't believe, try it, but be open. Be open to the magic and the possibilities, and keep your eyes, ears, senses open and alert to those, because they're there to assist in all ways and in whatever your business is. Because we started talking about this, about magic in your business. Now, we're not talking about probably sitting in an office and typing on a computer kind of business, because most people who are listening to this are soul-centered, probably entrepreneurs or people who work in some sort of industry or arena where they are helping others. That's just my sense. But
yeah,
that was beautiful, Lottie.
It was absolutely amazing. And I'm part of me sort of goes, wow, they were really treating you. They gave you 4 feathers. Usually, you'll get 3 and then they'll get, come on, you're pulling my leg. So I think that's,
they knew I was stubborn. I needed the confirmations to move on and to truly trust in it.
Yeah.
Well, what's that joke about? There's a few of those jokes about a guy who's in a flood or something, and he says, God, get me out of this. And a rowboat goes by and he sees it and he's like, God, get me out of it. And then a helicopter. I don't recall the joke. I'm not very good at remembering jokes, but it's all about God had been sending him. And then he gets to heaven and he says, God, why didn't you help me? He said, okay, I sent you the rowboat. I sent you the helicopter. I sent you the this, the that. Because he didn't listen. His eyes weren't open. I guess that's why that came to me, because we have to be aware. We have to be observant in order to accept magic, bring it into our lives. You have to be aware. You have to believe. Why not believe? I mean, I believe in unicorns. So yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I quite agree with you, but I would take it a bit further, because my own business is taking me into helping solopreneurs and entrepreneurs use magic, and they haven't done it before, and they are not in the same sort of industries maybe as one normally thinks. I mean, fantastic client that I've got at the moment, and he's a marketer and he teaches people AI, and he works to help people learn how to really use LinkedIn. Now that is great help, and he really does brilliant work at it. But he found me and he says, we started chatting. He says, how do you do that? How does it, which is exactly what we were just talking about. And so I said, well, come on a call with me and we can talk about it and see. And so he did. And he was really hooked. And now he's a client of mine, and I'm teaching him to use magic, to use his instincts, to ask. I mean, he now asks, he's got a set of people to call, get on DMs, and then maybe make a call with to help them, see if they want it. And he actually uses as a form of dowsing called sticky. And so he's got what happens is you've got a list of something and you just pass your finger down it, and then your finger will stick at one, and that will be it. And then you go down it first, your finger will stick at another one. And he's actually using that to prioritize his calls.
That's
and it's working.
I love that. It reminds me of, I think it was the first time I went to Arthur Findlay College back in 2017. And the first 2 days we worked more like physically with people or psychically with people. And then the third day she said, okay, now you guys are ready to talk to the spirit world. So we did a lot of things, reading each other to learn to tune in.
Yeah.
And one of the things we had to do was we had to use our hand, and we had to go down. So you made yeah, like 12 months in front of the person to get their birth date, the date and the month of their birthday. And so let's say 12 is up here, and then you would move your hand down, and you would see in your mind you have 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and it goes down. Oh, I feel it ends. It's stuck here on 6. Okay, now I'm going to do the date. So I'm going to say you were born in June, and then you moved your hand. You had 31 days, starting with 1 on the left, and then moving your hand across, and then say, oh, I feel resistance right here at 13. So I'm going to say your birthday is June 13th. And it was amazing how close we all got to the actual birth date of that person. It is as if, that we can feel that energy. So when you talk about him saying going down the list, I would say absolutely, because everything is energy, and it's just a matter of us learning the magic of using it in different ways.
Yes. And
Oh,
not being
so
afraid
cool.
of it.
What Lottie was talking about is a form of dowsing then,
Yes.
I assume.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What about a pendulum? I use a pendulum a lot. I feel like that's something easy for beginners,
Yes.
because you actually see it going back and forth, yes and no.
Yeah.
And those are just tools to help us access our intuition. And I do believe at some point we can do it on our own. I still rely on my pendulum for some things. And it's not always, I don't want to say correct, but it changes things. Sometimes I'll follow what my intuition told me, and I'll be like, oh, that was the wrong flight to book. Now I have to change it, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's great too. The pendulum. I use the pendulum a lot. And it's something that a lot of people can learn to do. And it's just, holding the pendulum still. And then typically I say, give me a yes. And the pendulum moves in a circle. And then I say to the pendulum, come to a still point. And then I say to the pendulum, give me a no. And it goes sideways, back and forth. And then I ask the pendulum again to come to a still point. And then I'll ask my question. Is this person allergic to bananas, or am I allergic to bananas? And then have the pendulum give me the answer. So it is an easy way for people to learn to use a tool like that, and to start working with that intuitive sense.
Yeah,
That's how you usually teach it. Start with the pendulum, because it's easy. You've got it in your pocket, or you can have, and it's easy to teach somebody, to find the yes and then find the no, whatever it is, and they can choose that. I mean, that's part of the training, and then they get it. And that's how I started this bloke. And and then he got like, what was the sticky you were talking about? Okay, right, we'll do it.
I like that. That's cool. I first learned about using a pendulum, years and years and years ago, before it was even like, thing. But you just take a string and put a paper clip on it to start. And then you say your name, and then it will go, if it's your right name, and then you change something in your name and say, is my name really, Lottie Selby? And it'll go, no, no, no. And that's how I don't even ask it yes or no anymore. I just know that one way is yes and one way is
absolutely
no. But I think anybody there, we just gave somebody a hint on how to do magic and be magic.
And you can actually do it yourself, and it'll take practice, because you're actually rewiring your body and your brain as well by bringing in your instincts and your intuition, because your brain is there sort of going, and but your instincts and your intuition are saying, go on, do get it. Yeah, I'll get it for you. We'll get together. And so it's this hurdle you have to get over, which is only in your mind, but you can do it. I mean, the number of people I've taught to dows in past 40, 50 years is enormous, and they all get it within the first lesson. One of the funniest is, if I've got a group, we can get those tea bags on a string. Very often they're herbal tea bags, and they're on a string. with a label with a flavor. So I said, anybody got a pendulum? Oh, never mind. And I'll just take my tea bag out, squeeze it, and here we go. And of course, everybody's like, you sort of go, yeah, it works. It's sort of like your paperclip idea. That's all you need, isn't it? It's a weight. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We're gonna
Magic is everywhere. The plants that I have in my house, everything is magic, just like everything is energy.
Indeed. And to me, what's the difference? Magic, energy, different word, but are we not talking the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
What worries
have we magicked ourselves out?
I've just got this wonderful cartoon in my brain though, of now there'll be all these office people with their herbal teas, and in the tea break, trying their pendulums out.
I love it, and I hope that is true.
Oh, I
hope that happens.
That would be really, really good. But sorry, Kim, how do you bring magic into your podcasting work? Because I know you do, because I've podcasted with you. So tell us about it.
I think, first of all, in a very practical sense, I bring magic in by researching the people that I am interviewing. And magic can be practical, practical magic. It can be something as simple. You can't just say, okay, well, I'm just going to magic myself this podcast and it's going to be fabulous. I mean, you have to create the magic. You have to do your research, but the magic part of it comes in the connection when I look into the other person's eyes, whether they're looking at me or not in the eyes, because with Zoom it's a little funky doodle. But with most of my guests, I ask them to close their eyes before we begin, take a deep breath, and picture. I ask the universe to help me release my ego so that I am all about the people for whom I am podcasting. And I may have been different when I interviewed you all because it changes every time. But this is very much a ritual now that I've developed. And I see my heart spark like this golden little filament going to their heart. So we are connected via this golden spark filament. And then we take another deep breath and I say, and so it is, or namaste. And the atmosphere in my space changes and I feel the energy in their space change. And that's how I create magic. I also do not prepare questions. I use my intuition and listening. Magic sometimes to me occurs when you are truly listening so that you can reflect back on what someone else is saying, at least in my podcast arena. But in the life, people want to be heard. So if you are listening, that is magic. That is a sense of magic. So that is how I try to bring magic into my podcast, by truly connecting with another human, by truly listening, because it's all about me shining a light on those people whom I am interviewing, because people such as yourselves are awakening the light in others. So I'm that spotlight on you so that you can share how you illuminate the lives of others. And that's how I work with magic in my podcast. But I couldn't have told you that until you asked me that question. It's not something I think about, it's just something innately that I do. But thank you for that. That was really interesting.
Well, I thought that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Did you, Lottie?
Yeah, no, I love it because you really touched upon some different things. The importance of listening to the person you're interviewing, tuning into that. And there are times, sometimes the person you're interviewing is talking for a long time and I have, I'm thinking of all these different things I want to ask them. So I have to take little notes as they're talking because the questions are just coming. But I would say, it's tuning into that intuition and just trusting it. Trusting that whatever needs to be said during that interview, the messages that needs to go out to the people listening will come. But it's just a matter for us to just relax and tune into that. And there will be people out there that are listening that says, wow, that was exactly what I needed to hear today. And it wasn't planned at all. It's just guided spiritually, through our intuition, through our global consciousness of tuning into each other, because we're all just one consciousness in the end.
Yeah.
All the information is already there. It's just a matter of letting it come out and letting it be heard.
Yeah.
Now, your people that you get are pretty remarkable. I mean, I am a devotee of your podcast, Lottie. I just really am. And I lost my train of thought because I was so involved in what you were saying. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Sometimes when I go back and listen as I'm editing, I'm like, oh, wow, that came out. I don't remember. It's interesting because when you are in the moment, I always think, oh, was that any good? Did I really? I don't know. And then I listen to it. I'm like, oh, yeah, good point. Okay, that was really good. So it is being in the moment. That's interesting. That just came to me. Being in the moment is magic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about, we were talking about tips for the listeners, and because our listeners will want some tips. And what you both just said made me think, how you, particularly how you work in the podcast, Kim, and how you work with clients, Lottie. But I'm thinking, you've got this team leader in corporate, and we've all been in corporate, so we know what that feels like. And if the team leader will actually tune in, and if you can train them, and this is part of what I've started to do now, train them, you use this spark, and this spark takes a link to the other person. And I've done this for years in groups. I'm now trying to train team leaders that you can put a spark out to all of your team, and they will connect. And then if you listen to them and really hear them and show them that you've heard them, like you said, both of you, that is magic. And the difference that your team will feel and the difference to their work is just huge. And it's just connecting and listening.
Yes.
I think it's just being, it comes back to being in the present moment, because we're so busy. Our mind has a tendency to either rehash the past, like we're stuck in this loop of hashing things through our mind. I can't believe this person said this or did that and blah, 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 blah. Right. And we're just stuck in that little rut. Or we're thinking about the future. Oh, I don't know if I do this, is it going to go well? And I don't know if that's the right decision. And what if I do this and that person says that? And we're living in the future instead of getting rid of the past and the future and trying to just be present, or practicing being present in the moment for the person you're interacting with, not being on the phone, not looking at your computer, but looking at the person, because we are, in the end, human spiritual creatures.
Yes.
And we need that interaction, and we need the interaction of looking at people's eyes, seeing their facial expressions and all of that in order to make our own nervous system work, because we co-regulate with everybody around us, right? So my nervous system is tuning into you and tuning into Kim right now, and we're all co-regulating with each other. But that is so important when you're working with people or interviewing people, that you can tune into that, because we're really connecting on a much deeper level than we think we are, because we're really tuning our nervous systems to each other.
Ellen, I love that you're working with the corporate world for this, because
I
much
haven't done very much yet, but this is where I'd like to go.
if you sat down in a meeting and everybody closed their eyes, can you imagine sitting around a circle of 10 or 12 people, everybody, okay, your boss says, all right, we're just going to take a minute, close your eyes. What the dynamic of that group would change, and everybody would be present and interconnected, as you said, Lottie, because their nervous systems would be regulated and calmer.
Yeah. I have actually done that many years ago, when I used to work in the MOD, and I used to have to chair meetings and lead meetings and that sort of thing. And I have managed to get people to just, let's all just take a moment. And you can feel the energy sort of up here with everybody's got their point to make and their thing to score and their money to get and whatever it is. And you can just feel the energy comes down. And you actually get some sense out of the meeting instead of, which can happen, you know, you get them all fighting with each other. And it really needs a lot of people to do that. So all you people out there who are doing this and are listening to us, take a moment. Just take a moment. Does that wind us up? I think that sort of brings us to a lovely point. Thank you, everybody, for listening, because we really appreciate it. And it'll go out on all of our different networks and podcasts at different times. My version of it might well go out quite soon. And then you'll have Kim's and Lottie's. So it'll keep coming around and on different networks. So tune in and take a moment.
Spread the magic. Ignite your sparks.
Stay true to your heart and stay true to your path.
See you next time.